Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another installment of our Black History Month program. For those of you who have been with us over the last few sessions, you'll know that we have got some excitement, some interesting conversations to be had. Now, I'm just going to do a brief intro because your host this evening is going to be Marilyn Devonish. So a bit of context. We talk about in Watford Black history, and not just Black History Month. However, October being Black History Month, we've got a program of activities set out. The activities are organized on the Watford African Caribbean Association and our Black History Steering Group. There's a range of activities that we've organized for the month, and we hope that you will find it possible to engage in these this evening and a number of other things that will be happening, and we'll tell you more about as we go along. This evening, we do have a special guest, and I'm not going to say very much more about that because I'm actually going to sort of hand you over to Marilyn in a minute and she'll tell you about that. But just in terms of process, if you could make sure that you are on mute if you're not speaking. We do have a chat function at the bottom of your screen that you can always use that to make some observation as we go along. And my final observation would be, I omitted to say this last time, of course, we have some conditions in our community that are very, very difficult conditions to that we are having to contend with. Namely, we've got sickle cell thalassemia and sickle cell and thalassemia. We do also have leukemia, and for these conditions, there's often a need for blood, and it is a situation where our blood doesn't always. Those conditions require often people with the same blood type, and that means people from our community. So we want to kind of encourage you to actually give blood if you can, because actually we have to look after our own interests. As we say, together we can achieve, and together we can achieve better health. So that's a bit of a advert in relation to that, but not just an advert. It's a really serious point about us looking after each other. So having said that, I'm going to now invite Marilyn, who is one of our members of our steering group, who's going to be hosting this evening to introduce our special guests. Marilyn, over to you.
Oh, thank you so much, Clive, and thank you to everyone for joining us, and also thank you to those of you who have taken the time to watch this replay recording. We appreciate you all. Now, I'm absolutely delighted today to be welcoming someone long anticipated, long awaited visitor. And let me just tell you about the author that you are going to be meeting today. So we're going to be speaking to Pamela R Haynes. Pamela R Haynes is a retired senior probation officer and an award-winning writer of the wonderful book we're going to be hearing about today called Loving the Brothers. I wrestled my copy back, long story, for another day. So Pam grew up in Canning Town, London, United Kingdom. Her parents hail from Barbados, and she is a Londoner and also a proud Bajan by descent. Her book is about 3 women in relationships, and I'm going to come back to that in a bit when we do the Meet the Characters. But Pam is also an advocate, an ambassador for Advocates Against Domestic Abuse, which is based in Barbados. She is a book mentor, a guest lecturer, and she seeks to raise awareness of domestic abuse issues, empower and inspire women to write and publish their own stories, which is another piece of the conversation we want to get onto today. And her book, Loving the Brothers, was published in the United Kingdom on the 8th of January 2018. So hello and welcome, Pamela. Before we get started, by way of introduction, is there anything else you would like our wonderful audience to know about you and who you are and what you do?
Yes, good evening, Clive, and good evening, Marilyn. Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to the discussion this evening. We've been trying to link up for quite some time, so it's actually wonderful to see you, Marilyn. What do I want people to know about me, really, is that if I can write a book and be successful, I do believe that anybody can write a book. We all have stories inside of us, and now is the time for us to write our stories.
Absolutely wonderful, amazing. Now, in terms of stories, I want to go back in terms of your story, and I would really love for you to tell us what inspired the book, first of all, because like you said, we've all probably got a book, in my case, several books inside of us. What inspired you to write this particular story?
Well, I worked in the criminal justice system for over 30 years. I spent 5 years working for Her Majesty's Crown Prosecution Service. So working for the prosecution service, I got to work alongside lots of police officers, lawyers, barristers, the whole judiciary. I was based in the first instance at Redbridge Magistrates Court, then becoming a law clerk at Snaresbrook Crown Court. Long story short, what I saw at the Crown Court, I felt I was more part of the problem than the solution. So I walked across the road to join the probation service, and I was involved in a variety of different roles, but one of the roles that I really was insightful was working with perpetrators and survivors of domestic abuse. So I used to run the integrated domestic abuse program. It was for men who were sentenced by the court to either do the program as part of their probation, or if they were released from prison, it was a condition on their license that they had to complete the program. At that time, the IDAP was about 18 months long. So it wasn't an easy, quick fix, do a couple of sessions and the person was all cured. It took forever for the men to try and complete it. And because it was quite challenging, a lot of them, for them it was easier, just send me to prison, revoke all of this, send me to prison because I don't have to think about my behavior. So it was quite challenging to keep them on the course, keep them motivated twice a week for 18 months. But around month 9, so halfway through, you started to see change in people's behavior. So the first 9 months is looking at the different types of domestic abuse, and the latter part of the program was equipping the men with new skills of how they can function in relationships. So, or even if the relationship has ended, how they could co-parent children and so on. So I was privileged to hear hundreds and hundreds of stories from victims of domestic abuse, and also working with perpetrators of domestic abuse. I was fast approaching a milestone birthday. I won't say what it was, but I was fast approaching a milestone birthday. When you're at that crossroads where you want to think, right, well, how do I want to let the world know that I was here? How do I want to mark my celebration birthday? And it was either starting my master's and then graduating and walking up, I could see myself walking across the stage and picking up my master's, or write a book. Both are expensive. It's expensive to complete a master's, and it's also expensive to write a book as well. I did try traditional publishers, but that's a tale for another time. I'm so glad that 8 weeks before my milestone birthday, I wrote my book, and here she is. She was birthed on the 8th of January 2018. And this was a combination of all the different types of domestic abuse that can happen. So, and I've put it into a book, but it's not just solely domestic abuse. It's also talking about Black courtship and what that might look like. It's also about Black love and family, and all that that entails, some of the cultural things that we observe, like 9 nights and so on, because there is a funeral which causes all the brothers and their partners to come together. So I would say I was inspired by the part of my journey where I was the facilitator on the domestic abuse program. And I wanted to write a story from a Caribbean / London point of view. So that's how the story developed.
Wow, that is quite a story. And I've got to take you back just to something that you said in passing. I was like, whoa, you said you realized you were part of the problem. And so you crossed over the road. Can you just kind of come back to that statement? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, every 6 months or so, we saw the same young Black men walking into court. There was one particular offender that was so prolific. He had his own cabinet in the office, a massive filing cabinet. So I felt like he was part of this revolving door, and nothing was stopping him from reoffending. There was also a probation officer based at court who would present all the pre-sentence reports to the judges. And I really wanted to know what was in those reports, because it made the judges sit up and listen and sentence them to alternatives to custody. Because when you're in the prosecution, the only sentence that seems to fit the crime is prison. You're very prison orientated. But there was something about the way that the social inquiry report, which we now call a pre-sentence report, that was written, that gave other sentencing options. And I wanted to be that influential in terms of going away, studying, getting my diploma, then my degree, in writing those kind of reports that will hopefully impact on people's lives. So the Crown Prosecution Service office that I worked at was number 1 to number 9 Romford Road, and the probation building was opposite number 20 Romford Road. So when I say I literally walked across the road, I walked across the road and joined the probation service. I was part of the youth justice system, youth justice unit. And I used to write to prisoners. I used to accompany them from prison to drug rehab and alcohol services, help them to rehabilitate with their families. That's what I meant when I said it felt like a revolving door, and I wanted to be part of making sure that people felt as though they had choices rather than offending.
Wow, thank you so much for clarifying. That makes perfect sense. And also, one of the things you said, I was giggling to myself because I'm like, I've seen that picture several times over, but in a different context. You're an award-winning author. I've lost count of the number of awards. Every minute on social media, you're like, I've got another one and another one and another one. Here's me. So that means you're often of course, pre-COVID, you're walking on stage with the applause to receive, like you would with your masters. When you said it, I'm like, you live that several times a year. Had you noticed that?
No, I haven't, because when I joined this game, I really didn't. It wasn't really about awards, and I'm sorry to say that I was inspired to write by something magical or spiritual. It really wasn't like that. It was all about me. I was reaching a milestone birthday, and these are one of the things of many things. I wanted to go on a cruise, for example, and I went on a cruise in 2018. So it was a number of things that I wanted to do across my birthday year, and writing a book was one of them. Albeit I had to start it earlier. It took me 2 years to write. So I started writing in 2016. But my why was all selfish. It was all about me. But as the book has grown in popularity and been nominated, and I received an award for my 30 years at working in the criminal justice system, and then I got author of the year, and then a bit later on I got author of color. It just evolved from there. But I wish I was being nominated and accepting awards every other month, but it's just not like that. It's just the three awards that I have. But I do feel humbled that someone took the time to sit down and put pen to paper and to nominate me in the first place. So that's very dear to me, that someone took the time to do that.
Oh, that is absolutely wonderful. Now, what I'm going to do is move, because I'd like people to meet the characters. I'm going to take this from the back of your book. There's a little extract here. And then what I'm going to ask you to do, Pamela, once we've done this, I would love for you to choose a segment from your book that you would like to read to us. So here we are. Let's meet some of these characters in Loving the Brothers. So it says, Patty is a busy senior probation officer working in Camden, London, with a teenager off to university. Charmaine, I know her very well because she's often talked about on social media. Charmaine is a stressed out mum of twins, and Rose is a pastor's wife with 5 daughters. Life gets complicated when they meet 3 brothers, Manly, Marcus, and Junior Morgan, who are from a close-knit Jamaican family. All are hoping for divine intervention as they plot to leave their abusive relationships on the same day. So with that little kind of taster and introduction, Pamela, where would you like to start in terms of sharing some of this wonderful book with the audience?
No problem. I think I'm going to start with Patty, and I'm going to start at chapter 1 right at the beginning. I just about caught the 17:10 train from Camden Overground to Stratford Station. Given the rush hour was in full effect, I was prepared to stand all the way to Westfield until a young brother motioned me to sit down in his seat. I didn't argue with him as my feet was killing me from wearing heels at the office all day. Thank you, I said with a smile, and hurried awkwardly to trade places with him. He stood over me, smiling back, and oh, what a smile. All of a sudden, I felt myself blush, or was it a hot flush? Difficult to tell at my age. Either way, I had to tell myself to calm down. Beads of sweat suddenly formed on my brow as I frantically looked through my huge messenger bag for my fan. All this time, this brother was observing me as if I was his entertainment. I couldn't find my fan, which I think I must have left in my clutch bag, the one I used the previous weekend to attend an event at Stoke Newington Town Hall for people living with chronic kidney disease. So I ended up finding myself with the Metro newspaper that I'd picked up from the station on my way to work. I planned on completing the Sudoku quiz during my break, but I ended up working through lunch. My makeshift fan wasn't working too well, so I slipped it back into my bag and undid the belt on my Peruna Mac and the top 2 buttons of my shirt. I was trying to look anywhere except up. I looked over to my left. A Polish guy was sitting next to me in his muddy Stone Island tracksuit and an orange high visibility jacket. He looked as though he had spent the whole day working down the sewer, and he smelled like it too. I managed to suppress the bile in my throat and quickly looked over to my right. The student in her school uniform sitting next to me was listening to music on her smartphone with a poker face. In fact, most of the passengers in my carriage appeared to be plugged into one device or another. I don't understand how people can listen to music without reacting in some way. When I listen to music, I want to bop my head, tap my feet, dance, sing along. I just couldn't sit there. I love listening to music, especially live music. At the moment, I'm on a reggae vibe, having seen Chronix in concert at Somerset House recently. The concert was so uplifting. I would definitely go and see him perform live again. Anyway, when I thought Mr. Man, the gentleman who gave up his seat for me, wasn't looking, I took a sneaky peek at him. 6'4", caramel brown in complexion, like a digestive biscuit, medium build, but muscular. The color of his eyes was obscured by his sunglasses, but I imagine that they were the same light brown as mine. Cute looking, nice goatee, not that much younger than me, I thought. Shoulder-length dreadlocks neatly tied back into a loose ponytail. Ralph Lauren t-shirt and probably Ralph Lauren jeans too, which he wore very well. He definitely works out, I thought to myself while I observed him as he gripped the rail above with both hands, exposing the bottom end of his six-pack. To avoid looking any further, I quickly looked up at his face, and there he was, smiling down at me, again, like something sweet him. Then I noticed the gold tooth, and I instantly lost interest. I winced and thought to myself, he's a FOB, fresh off the boat.
Oh, Pamela, they're so good. I had to get my own fan out and start like, oh, okay, we're getting hot on the tube. And what I love about that is as you're describing it, I can feel like I'm there at all of those places. Being a Londoner, I know those places, so it really resonates. But I know when people have read reviews and written reviews of your book, they also say they're completely engrossed. They can't put it down. And I'm like, keep going, because I need to know. Do they just part and get off the tube, or do they connect? That is absolutely fantastic. Tell me something, when you were writing, did the characters, I hope this makes sense, this question, but did the characters speak to you?
Oh, absolutely. They non-stop. They'd keep me up. I find that especially when I want to go to sleep and everything's a little bit quieter and quite calm, then one of the characters pops up. So I visibly put her on the edge of my bed, and they tell me what's going to happen next. And, you know, we argue, we fall out. Sometimes we don't speak, but that's the process that works for me. One particular character, Rose, when I thought the story had ended, she actually said, oh, no, I've still got more that I want to say. And I'd already submitted it to my publisher. And she was going, no, you need to write this down. And she was on a loop the whole night until I actually said, if I write down what you say, will you stop and let me get some sleep? And that's how that happened. So I keep notebooks all about the house. I never know when I'm going to be inspired. I had one character that didn't speak to me for about 2 weeks. And, you know, every evening my husband came in and said, is Patty still on the bed? And yeah,
vayan a cocinar, vayan a cocinar.
I had no idea of how to
Chingar a su madre,
move
pinche
her
vieja
off.
pendeja.
Vamos a cocinar.
I don't know what's happened there.
Fuck you, son of a bitch.
Sorry,
Shall I carry
Paul,
on?
just reporting those. Carry on.
Cállate el hocico, vieja pendeja.
Haz el sexo, carajo.
We have been quite lucky. We have never had that before on any of our events. So that's a first for us, I will say. Apologies about that. Please continue. So your husband was saying, is she still on the bed?
Is Patty still on the bed? Is she still in her towel? What's happening? Because everybody gets invested in one character, at least one character in the book. And it wasn't until I was making dinner, literally stirring something on the stove, when I realized, I know what happens next. I know how to get her moving. So that's what the process has been like for me, really, that the characters tell me their story and tell me what's going to happen, you know, what's happening next with their stories.
Absolutely amazing. And also, I'm just going to say quickly to the moderators, if you could go through and with the names that you're not recognizing, that you don't see, if you can just very quickly click on them and remove them, that would be absolutely amazing. Thank you so much. That would be wonderful. I will continue to do that in a few moments as well. So next question I had for you in terms of the theme and the story of the book and some of your background in terms of domestic abuse. One of the things that, I mean, as soon as we went into lockdown, it was one of the first thoughts I had in terms of some of the clients that I see and the areas that I find myself working in. It was that whole thing around thinking, oh my goodness, what do people who are in those kinds of relationships do when you no longer have the reason and the excuse to be going out to work? You can't go out on a girls' night out or a drink with the boys. And you are just completely stuck in terms of where you are. So one of the things that I was really kind of...
Oye, espera, no entiendo. Solo entiendo chin, chin, chao, chong,
Can you somebody take all these Spanish names people offline, please?
Yes, I
offline, please, porno, xx.com.
Let's see. All right, and remove. And remove. And if you don't know how to do it, please send me a message. I'll very quickly tell you. But basically, you hover over them, and it will just you'll get the option 3 dots, and you get the option to remove them. So that's the way that you do it. Fabulous.
I have been trying to keep up with them, Marilyn.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. And Clive, if you want to just send me the raw recording at some point, I'll sit and I'll edit this out. That would be great, but that's another conversation for another day. So one of the things I wanted to ask you, because I was then thinking about the whole piece around how do people now cope in those situations where they're pretty much together 24/7. What are your thoughts? What would you say for anyone who finds themselves in that kind of situation?
First of all, I want to say that lockdown made no difference to somebody experiencing domestic abuse. They were already in lockdown before lockdown happened.
So what is up, guys? Welcome back. Today I'm going to be teaching you an all-new video on how
Sorry, Pamela, continue.
I can still hear music.
Oh, can you? Now, I'm just looking. I can't see any other microphones open.
No, okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Put me off a bit now. Where were we?
So we were talking about in terms of people who find themselves in those positions where they're locked in, nowhere else to go because of the lockdown situation, and any kind of thoughts, anything you'd share from your background with regards to that.
Yeah, I mean, the sharing is that lockdown is only a new phenomenon to the rest of us. For a woman experiencing domestic abuse, she may very well be in lockdown before lockdown even happened. So in terms of being in isolation, that would be one of the issues, being cut off from her family, her movements controlled, like who she can see, who she can't see, who she can make phone calls to, who she can't contact. So those kind of things that we experienced in terms of not being freedom of movement and being able to do what we wanted to do. In my experience, a lot of women who are experiencing domestic abuse were already going through that. So there were already girlfriends that she wasn't allowed to go out with or hang out with. There was already family members that she was cut off from. Very often a victim of domestic abuse will find themselves quite isolated in an isolated area. They could be rooms that she's not allowed to enter into. I do know a victim of domestic abuse that wasn't allowed to open her own post or any post that came to the address. So those kind of themes around being quite isolated was happening long before lockdown.
And in terms of just good places, if you know, like for example, when people talk to me about where do you go when you're feeling down, depressed, etc., I always say Samaritans is the one that I called. Are there any organizations that you can think of? And fine, if not, we can put some details in later on, but is there any that come to mind that anyone listening to this might want to call or look into?
Yeah, I mean, I think for every situation is different. Every situation is unique. I tend to refer people to the National Domestic Abuse Helpline number, which is 0808 2000 247. So I can put that in the chat later, but that you know, there are trained counsellors there, not just for women, but for men who are experiencing domestic abuse as well. And that's the number one place where I refer people to, because everyone's situation is different.
Wonderful, thank you so much for that. And also in terms of the whole piece around writing, and you've answered part of the question, which I absolutely love. One of the things people often say is, okay, well, how do you write? What is the process? So I'd really love to know, you said you've got your notebooks all over the place. It sounds like you write when you're inspired. Do you have any other tricks or techniques for anyone listening who might be feeling inspired to write and share their story while we're on the subject of the book and writing?
No problem. I think that what's really useful is working out whether you're a morning person or whether you're a night owl. So what time of the day suits you best to do your writing? During Loving the Brothers, I was a bit of a night owl. So the best time of day for me to write will be between maybe 10 o'clock and 1 o'clock. So my notebooks are just to write down ideas, but in terms of sitting down and being in front of the laptop, I was more of a night owl. It could go on to later than that. It could be 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And that worked for me, because it was very difficult to try and stay motivated after doing a 9-to-5 job in front of a laptop, then to come home and then be in front of a laptop was quite difficult. So I'd go through the ritual of making sure that I'd eaten and that I had a nice place where I wanted to write. So I will say the first thing is to work out whether you're a morning person or a night owl. During lockdown, after I'd baked all the soda bread that I could bake and all the biscuits and did the Don't Rush challenge and everything else, the best time for me to write then was during the day. I had family home with me, so we were all here in it together, and created a nice little writing spot. So now I have my own little area where I can come and write, and that was really useful. So Loving the Sisters, my second book, was written during lockdown. Because we had all this time, and I'd run out of excuses. We had all of this time on our hands. So I thought, you know what, make use of this special opportunity to sit down and get the book written.
Wonderful, wonderful, fantastic. So I'm just submitting a few more little reports as we go. And it sounds as though your family have been, from the outside looking in, it sounds as though your family are really very supportive of you and your writing. Would you say that is the case, and they've been helpful in that process?
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't have done all what I have done without the support of my husband. So he was the one that built me the desk, and he would actually physically bring me my laptop and say, Pam, shouldn't you be writing something now? The book's not going to write itself. It's good to have people that you can talk through the story with as well. So he heard it first. My children were very supportive, about what I'm trying to do. In fact, my middle boy is now writing a screenplay. So I wish him all the best with that. So we've got a few other writers who are coming up in the family as well. So that's really good. My sisters are very supportive. I think one of them is on the line now, who's very supportive. She was actually my reader for the second book, Loving the Sisters. So as and when I submitted a chapter to her, she would run it through to look at, issues. Did it make sense in relation to the first book? And also she's a fan of Loving the Brothers. So she also got to read the manuscript in its rawness first, which was really, really good. So, yeah, it's definitely a family affair. I dedicate Loving the Brothers to my parents, to my siblings, to, I've also got a group of friends who are very instrumental in terms of making sure that they push the book in their circles as well, which was really, really nice. I call them Team Haynes. And it's been nice to bring people along with me on the journey. So if I get a +1 invitation to do something, I would invite one of my family members or my friends to come with me. So it's definitely a family traveling on a journey. And when I dream for myself, I dream that my family and friends are with me on the red carpet at some red carpet event. Could be Hollywood, could be the Oscars, could be the Met Gala, but my family and my team are with me.
Oh, that is wonderful. And what a lovely gift for Team Haynes to kind of never know when they're going to get a lovely invitation. That's amazing. And that's one of the things I've observed. You've been absolutely fantastic in terms of the marketing and the promoting of the book. So I remember being quite struck, speaking to a big publisher. One of the biggest pieces of conversation was not about the book, it was about the pushing of the book, the marketing of the book, the selling of the book. And I was like, wow, that was quite a revelation. And that's one of the things you've been absolutely fantastic at, because seeing the number of people who actually themselves feel inspired to go on and do a review and write a review on Amazon, it's been really wonderful to watch that in process as well, and creating the sense of community around it. So congratulations on doing that. It's been fantastic. Now, for those of you who are in the audience, if you have any questions for Pamela, you can put them into the chat. You can also unmute your microphone if you wanted to. You can raise your hand if you know how to do that. So we would love to also have your questions. So I'm just going to stop and pause for a moment. And I just want to see if anyone in the audience has a question that you would like to ask of Pamela. If so, please speak now before we move to our next segment. And Clive, you're a man who's never short of words. So is there anything that you would like to ask before we move on?
Thanks, Marilyn. I must admit that I've been slightly side-footed by this, let's say, intervention by people from outer space that wasn't expected. But I actually was interested to hear you, Pamela, talking about your early career, because you may have heard me say early on that I think somebody else is coming in, that I was that I am a magistrate. So it's interesting. I was listening to some of what you were talking about, the programs, and the fact that currently what we find for a long time, we've not really had a process that's designed to, as it were, to get people to change their behavior, because too often we see so many people who seem to almost go through revolving doors, I think you were saying, and it's really unfortunate. So did you find when you were, as it were, changed to the other side, that actually you were making a bigger difference, making a bigger impact? And what was it that caused that for you?
We are talking the mid-1990s. So I joined the probation service in 1992, where we were much better resourced. So I got to not just do paperwork and push, push paper around my desk. I was actually able to work alongside young people. I remember one trip we took them to, some of them had never traveled out of the borough, or unless they were committing offences, that was probably the only time they left London. So it was wonderful to be able to take a group of young people to France just for the day, to let them see that this is how other people live, and that the world is actually bigger than the circles that they're actually moving in. So I felt that I was able to make impact in the lives of young people almost immediately. So I was a law clerk at Snaresbrook Crown Court. I never really came into contact with offenders. My role was mainly working with the judiciary and with witnesses and victims of offences. So being on the other side meant that I was able to help people, refer people to mental health facilities, to drug and alcohol partnerships. You'd be surprised at the number of young people that can't read and write. And we were able to help in terms of getting them into employment, training and education. So I felt as though at that time we were so better resourced that there were other organizations that we could refer people to and that had a direct impact on, on their life. I do remember one young person getting their CSCS card. After months of working with him, I do remember referring another man to the Prince's Trust. And the first time I saw him smile was when he finally opened his business. So I do feel as though I've been able to have a direct impact on, right from the beginning in that particular role.
And it's interesting, though, actually, because listening to you speak, it's clear that, as I see too, and as a magistrate, I sit a couple of times a month, but there are cases that you kind of sticks in your memory because they're there's something about it, positively sometimes, negatively too. So some of these things that you're recalling, I presume, are some of those kinds of cases that are stuck in your mind despite the years.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I was able to incorporate some of the things of, you know, some of the discussions that I've had, some of the sessions that I ran as a DV facilitator, and incorporate some of those things into the book as well, so that they are demonstrated and that they are, you know, that they are there. I mean, there's a story of a young man told me that the question was, when was the first time you experienced domestic abuse? And he was actually 3 years old. And at 3, he could still remember traveling down the stairs after his mum had been punched by his dad. And he remembered all the efforts that she made to save him from hitting the floor. When he was traveling in her hands, she had him in her hands, and that was quite profound. So there are stories that will always stay with me and always be part of me, because you know, that's just the way it is. They stick with you. And surprise, surprise, he turns out years later to become a perpetrator of domestic abuse. But I acknowledge that children tend to be in the same room or in the next room when violence is occurring. So that's quite, you know, quite prolific.
Yeah, what goes around comes around, as they say. Thanks very much for that.
Wonderful, thank you, Clive. And I was thinking of the whole thing, though the saying was apple doesn't fall far from the tree. That was one of the sayings from back in the day. But one of the things that you said earlier in terms of the revolving door and being in a place and a space where you could maybe stop that cycle is important. And I know that, of course, there are people out there kind of doing that work now. So Pamela, what I would love is another extract from the book, please. Now, of course, choose whatever you like, whichever character you like. We're good to sit and listen. So I'd love to hear the next sort of little extract.
Okay, this is a bit further on in the book, and this is chapter 5, and the character is Charmaine. I begged my neighbor Marcia to look after the twins and let me borrow her car. She can see the word stressed out written across my forehead, so she consents after asking a few questions. She knows I wouldn't ask unless I really needed to. I quickly make my way to Thames Magistrates Court and park up in the virtually empty car park. I didn't even know the court buildings were open on a Saturday morning. The security guard is friendly, even though I've interrupted him eating his cornflakes. He checks my handbag and ushers me through the security scanner. He tells me that all the overnight cases will be heard in courtroom 1. I check the notice board outside the courtroom, and it confirms that Carlos Anthony Morgan is indeed appearing in court, but no details of the offence. The usher is of no use either. I sit in the back of the courtroom in the public gallery and wait. I take in my surroundings and the people in it. The courtroom is like a stage, an old, tired looking stage in need of a good lick of paint. Everybody looks like they're recovering from a hangover and moving in slow motion. I shudder to think what I must look like. As in my haste to get to court, I passed a flannel over myself in the sign of a cross, scrubbed my teeth and pulled on yesterday's clothes, my infamous black leggings and t-shirt. I don't think I stopped to cream my face or put on my deodorant. I quickly sniff under my armpit and I'm immediately repulsed by the smell. I seriously need to bathe when I get home. I catch a glimpse of myself in the reflection of the glass which surrounds a public gallery, and although I avert my eyes quickly, it wasn't rapid enough. I see a fat, haggard woman looking back at me. I must be a size 20 by now. How did that happen in 4 short years? My hairline is receding from continually dragging my hair back into a ponytail, and my skin looks battered from not looking after myself properly. No wonder Junior strays. I'm surprised he comes near me. I don't want to come near me. I lean forward to catch what's being said, but I can barely hear what's going on from where I'm sitting. The woman from the prosecution is outlining, from the CPS is outlining the prosecution case against an old Pakistani woman who stole from Primark. The old woman looks proper upset and full of shame. Primark, of all the places to steal from, I think with disdain. There are several designer shops up at Westfield to shoplift from with quality gear. The stuff in prime Marnie, as my mum calls it, is bargain buckets, and the clothes only last one season. I don't buy anything in there from the twins, and when I lose weight, I'm not shopping there either. Well, the Pakistani woman gets a fine for shoplifting, and she's led outside by the duty solicitor. Seizing my opportunity to find out what the hell's been going on, I follow them outside the courtroom. When he's done speaking to his client, I introduce myself as Charmaine Morgan, Junior's wife. He looks me up and down as if he's just trodden something, and then he informs me that Junior got into a fight with a woman and broke her nose. When I asked who the woman was, he tells me to ask Junior for the details. I immediately go outside and light up a cigarette. I finish that cigarette in a couple of puffs and I light another. Bloody bastard. As I go back into the courtroom, Junior is sitting in the dock flanked by 2 Serco security guards. He's slumped over and his dreadlocks are covering his face. The CPS woman reads out the alleged offense. Now hear this crock of shite. Junior went to buy his next woman's house and leaves at midnight. He suspects that she has another man, so he sits in the car like his flaming Columbo, waiting to catch her out. Another geezer, Mr. Claremont, the prosecution woman says, shows up and is greeted passionately on the doorstep by my girl. An enraged Junior jumps out of the car and beats up the pair of them, calling her a slag and all sorts. A member of the public calls the police, and it takes 6 police officers from City Road Police Station to tackle Junior. They beat his ass like Rodney King and cart his ass away from the scene.
Sorry, I'm snorting with laughter. And the line that really tipped me over the edge was like flaming Columbo, because my friends will know if I'm not working on a Sunday, Columbo is one of my favorite things to sit and watch. Pamela, I can see why people are writing these reviews about seriously, because I'm guessing wherever you start in that book, it's a page turner that you actually want to know more. Would you say, and this, I don't even know if this is, because we all know there are people called editors who can take something and make it wonderful, but I know the essence of this, regardless of your editor, is you. Did you always know that you had a gift for storytelling, for drawing us in?
No, not really. If it is a gift, then it was something that I inherited from my dad, because he used to always tell us stories. One of the favorite things to do is, especially after we've had our baths and our hair was washed and plaited, and I'm one of 5 siblings, was to sit and listen to stories from Barbados in the main. So he would tell us stories about his friends that he hung out with, climbing mango trees and coconut trees and roasting breadfruit on the beach and playing cricket. So if anything, the storytelling side of it has come from us. And I do think that as a race of people, we're very good storytellers, writing oral stories, sharing oral stories. And I specifically remember Anansi stories, and we more or less grew up in the library as well, surrounded by books and stories, but there were always things that other people did. Publishing books was what other people did. And I'm so glad now that I got the courage to put actually something in print and put our stories in print. So as I said, we are right at the moment, we are writing fiction, non-fiction, self-help, sci-fi. And I really do want to encourage your listeners, if you have a story burning in you, to get the story out, journal, write poetry, whatever it is. I think there are 11 of us on the call. And if we wrote 11 books, that it still wouldn't put a dent in the kind of books that we need to redress the balance. When I was studying A-level English, I grew up on Shakespeare, the Bronte sisters, Martin Luther, all of these kind of books. And I do think that we need to redress the balance and get our own books out there.
absolutely wonderful. And I totally agree, and myself included. I'm kind of, as I'm saying that. Now, in terms of stories, what is next? I know that I can see from social media that Loving the Sisters is coming. So do you want to tell us what you can so far about the next book in the series?
Yeah, it's a trilogy. The Loving the Brothers series is a trilogy. So the second book, because I leave people on a massive cliffhanger in Loving the Brothers, goes to answering telling the next part of the story. So Loving the Sisters is about friendship, about loyalty, and about love, and about justice. And that's all I really want to say about what the second book is about, but it's the next installment. I wrote it during lockdown. I grew from the feedback that I was given for Loving the Brothers, so that it was too short. So Loving the Sisters is a longer read, and goes into a lot more detail in terms of what the characters are about and what happens in their story next. So I can tell you that it has gone to several publishers. I do have one publishing offer here that I need to look more closely at to see whether it's a suitable fit for me. But yeah, I'm not in any desperate hurry to sign something and it not being the best deal for me. So I'm quite happy to wait, and I'm quite happy to, walk away. When I originally went to a traditional publisher, they wanted me to change too much of my story. So they didn't like the title, they didn't like the cover of my book, and they wanted me to change one of my protagonists and make her white. And I wasn't prepared to do that. My story are about three beautiful Black women wearing their natural hair, who are at different stages of life, but celebrating us. And it's interesting that fast forward to the murder of George Floyd, suddenly publishing houses were saying, well, where are the Black authors and the Black writers? We've been here all the time. But as I said, they wanted to change my book too much, and I didn't really want to do that. So, and at the moment, I'm writing Loving the Children. I just want to be in a state of readiness so that when the right offer does come along, I've got all my eggs in a row, and I'm all my ducks in a row, and I'm ready to go for it.
Wonderful, wonderful. Before I even follow up on that, I see Marlene has her hand raised. So Marlene, please, if you'd like to unmute, we would love to hear your question.
No, I was just listening and I thought, wow, I could relate to all of this, Primark, Westfield, and everything that links to East London. Is the story based on a true story? Did I miss that part?
No, the book is fiction, but everybody thinks the book is about them. So, or they resonate with the story of one of the women, and they think that they know her. So I've had people tell me, I know Rose, but Rose lives in North London. She hasn't got 5 girls, she's got 5 boys, but it's the same person, So, and I've had people ring me and saying, is the book about me, and get all stern and upset. So it's definitely fiction. I think I'm learning that the second book should have a disclaimer on it to say that this is fiction. But it definitely has the themes of domestic abuse. And I think that's what people can relate to. It's set in East London, so you'll hear places like Plaistow, Levi Roots restaurant when it was open. In the book, it's set in 2015, so it was open then. Also a bit of South London, Battersea, Gants Hill, all places that you will know, Westfield Shopping Centre, that you will know, but it's also part based in Jamaica. I was saying to Clive before we went live that I've been to Jamaica twice, and I wanted to incorporate how beautiful Jamaica is and some of the places that I visited while I was there. So the book is based in Negril, in Westmoreland, and you will hear me talk about the music, the culture, the food, the people, church life, and how important that is in the Caribbean. And you know, we have two very fiery Jamaican, Barbadian women in the book as well. And, you know, yeah, so everybody's represented. I tried to include most of the islands. So I'll talk about, you know, a St. Lucian woman who married a young man and how that came about. So yes, so I tried to give a very much a London feel to the book.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's based on a reality, but in a fictional, but it's not based on a particular person that you can maybe say it's Marlene or whatever name, Jennifer or whatever. So interesting.
No, there are also real people in the book. So Levi Roots is mentioned by name in the book. I've got his permission to do that. There's a DJ I know called Shoe Dr. Martin. He's in the book as well. I also have music like Michelle Escoffrey is in the book as well, and I sought her permission to reference her record in the book as well. And my DJ friend, before the book even came about, he was up and down telling everyone, I'm in Pam's book, you know, and you know, and I gave him, you know, kudos for that. In Loving the Sisters, Quincy is in the book. Quincy the comedian is in the book. So is Kat Francois, who is a fitness instructor. She's in the book. And there are local people that you may, you know, you see the name and you think, oh, so-and-so, they're in the book as well. So that's been, you know, that's been nice as well, that I've been able to give a nod to, you know, people who I quite admire and I quite respect.
Oh, that is wonderful, Pamela. I absolutely love that. And I can see that we have JP that also has hand raised. So we've got a couple of minutes left. So if you do have a question, we've only got 2 or 3 minutes if you wanted to get that in. So JP, over to you.
Evening, Pamela. Just a quick question. You said there's several types of domestic violence, but when I think of domestic violence, obviously I only think of the physical violence. Can you describe the other types of domestic violence?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the question, JP. Using intimidation will be one of them. Using emotional abuse, so all the name calling, putting her down, making her feel bad about herself, calling her names, making her think she's crazy, playing mind games, humiliating her and making her feel guilty. Using isolation, which I spoke about earlier. So controlling what she does, who she sees, who she talks to, taking her phone. I watched a Netflix show this evening called Maid, and I'm about maybe episode 7 or so, but her partner takes her, he doesn't take the phone from her, he just doesn't put credit on it. So he's effectively taken the phone from her because she can't make calls, she can't get help, she can't go to work because she can't contact her employers. So that's quite a big one in terms of making people feel isolated. There's another book called Brutally Honest, which is nonfiction, and it's the story of Melanie B. And in that book, she wasn't allowed to pick up the phone to call her family in England when she was living in the States. So this is Melanie B from the Spice Girls. So, you know, it can happen to any woman at any time, regardless of what their status is. Minimizing, denying and blaming. And the example I can give was a young man that I worked with who told me he just gave her a few slaps, but he actually broke her cheekbone. So it definitely wasn't a few, but they have a way of minimizing it, thinking that it wasn't as bad as it really was. Using children, so making her feel guilty about the children, using the children to relay messages, using visitation to harass her, using male privilege. So in this country, not that long ago, it was okay to beat your wife with a stick no bigger than your thumb. So it's interesting when men say, oh, the courts are all for the women now, but in legislation, the courts were for the man. Her property, her land, anything like that automatically went to the man once she got married. Using economic abuse, so financial abuse. You know, there are some women that tell me they don't have money in their purse to even buy, to even buy bread. So they end up entering the criminal justice system because they're stealing food. Using threats and coercion would be one of the last ones I'll mention here. So making or carrying out threats to do something to hurt her, threatening to leave her, threatening to commit suicide, reporting her to social services, making her drop charges, and making her do things which are illegal as well. Perhaps you can invite me back another time, Clive, to go into that a lot further, but that's just a brief overview. So thank you for asking the question, JP.
Yeah, JP, that was a fantastic question. Thank you so much. And as you were going through all of those, I've written them down. I'm like, oh, I think we need another webinar on this, because while you were talking, JP, did you want to have a final word?
No, thank you very much for explaining that, Pamela, because I think most people just think it's just physical, but as you quite clearly outlined, it can take many forms.
All right, thank you.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much. Great question. Fantastic answer, Pamela. Now, in closing, as we bring this to a close, number one, I just want to come back to something you said earlier, and kind of well done in terms of standing your ground, because you know your characters, you've lived with your characters, they've sat on the end of your bed. So I think that's a really courageous thing to do, to actually say, no, I'm not changing them, and this is who they are, and this is what the book is about. So applaud you for that. And of course that whole thing about, where are the Black authors, like you said, they're always here, they always have been. So well done on that front. First of all, in terms of people, if they did want to purchase a book, and I know this is a question that Clive is always asking of the authors, do you prefer them to buy it through Amazon, or is there a place where they can buy it from you directly, first of all?
Yeah, I mean, if people want to reach out to me, I have a few copies here if they wanted a signed copy. But since we're in Black History Month, I'm all about supporting other Black businesses as well. So I can tell you that there are still copies at New Beacon Books in North London, if you wanted to purchase a copy from there. And there are signed copies also available at Book and Culture. So Book and Culture with a K also have several copies, and they are based in Brent, I believe. So there are copies there as well. And after that, if you can't get a copy there, then there's Waterstones, there's W.H. Smith's, Foyles, Blackwell's, all good bookshops that are there as well. And if you can't get a copy there, and it's easier for you to get one off of Amazon, there, of course, it's available on Amazon. But wherever you buy it from, please leave me a review and let me know how much you enjoyed your book. And please look out for Loving the Sisters when that comes out.
Wonderful. And in terms of your social media handles, your website, your email address, do you want to just give us some of those details as well, please?
Yeah, I think the best place to contact me would be via social media. So my handle is on Instagram is Loving the Brothers Author. You can look out for my book on Facebook, which is Loving the Brothers by Pamela R Haynes. I'm on Twitter at Pam Haynes, and I'm on LinkedIn at author Pamela R Haynes.
Wonderful, thank you so much. And in closing, Pamela, is there anything that we haven't touched on today, anything I haven't asked you that you would actually like to share in closing with our audience, both here live and those watching the future recording?
Yes, because I understand how difficult it is for self-published authors to get media attention. We very rarely, I've had one BBC interview, but in the main, I know that self-published authors find it very difficult to get media attention for their books. I started a podcast called the Author to Author podcast on International Women's Day on the 8th of March this year. I'm already 10 episodes in. For the first season is done. I'm about to start the second season. So if you are a self-published author out there and you would like to be featured on my podcast, all I ask for is 2 copies of the book, one for me to read and one to give away as a competition prize. The podcast is sponsored by Dalgety Teas, so I'll also throw in some tea bags for you to enjoy as well. And I just want to encourage your listeners here today to have a look at the Author to Author podcast. We're on 11 listening platforms, so pick one of your favorites, like Spotify. The podcast also goes out on 2 radio stations, which is Pam Tango Radio, that serves the UK and Africa and Asia, and UK246.com, which covers Barbados and the Caribbean and the Americas as well. So yeah, it's a plug for the podcast as well, please.
And a very well-deserved plug. It's a global podcast. And that reminds me, actually, something I got from your podcast. I thought, I like that. I'm going to ask Pamela one of these questions. So my question for you, Pam, before I hand back to Clive to do a bit of a close, and maybe tell us what's coming up next, is golden apples or mangoes?
Mangoes. That was easy. Yeah.
For me, I was like, but for me, it's golden apples. I'm a golden apple girl. I will be honest. Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Pamela. It's been absolutely amazing to have you. So delighted, really appreciate your time. And I will now hand back to you, Clive, for our closing.
Thank you very much, Marilyn. And thank you so much, Pamela. I'm now going to have to go and purchase this book so I can catch up. And in fact, I'm going to understand the criminal justice system a little bit better, it seems. I mean, all of those different forms of domestic violence and so on that we come across. It's like I was back in court listening to some of the domestic violence cases and looking at the variety. It's been extremely interesting despite the disturbances that we've now eliminated, and we'll have to put some measures in place for that. But thank you very much indeed. As always, these are always very refreshing conversations, and I'm sure when people view this, there'll be a few more books being purchased as a result of that. And clearly, the sequel will be much sought after. I'm going to want to find out a bit more about that, but I'm going to have to read the first one first. So thank you very much indeed. Just and thank you, Marilyn, as usual, peerless in your conduct of what is going on, and nothing gets in the way of that. What else are we doing? So the next event that we're having, I put some information on the chat there. We're actually focusing on the mental health and well-being of the African and Caribbean communities on Thursday. There is an Eventbrite link that's in there that you can go to, where you'll be able to register. And once you've registered, we'll send you the direct invite. But of course, if you also leave us your email address, we'll send you an invite in any event. But so we've got different ways of being able to engage with that. Sorry, my grandson is making some noise in the house at the moment. So we've got a host of other things that will be happening, and I'm trying to think which the next event, but we've seen on our web.
Want me to give you a quick summary?
Yes,
so
please.
We've got the Thursday the 14th. It's the mental health and well-being of the African and Caribbean communities in Hertfordshire. That is at 6, that a bit slightly earlier, 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. On Saturday, we have a special screening of I Am Not Your Negro. It's the James Baldwin film. That is actually a night out. We're going to have to coerce you to come out of your house because it's at the Watford Palace Theatre. Those of you who are in Watford, you know it's very, very central in the middle of town. For my out-of-towners, it's literally 5 minutes walk from Watford Junction mainline station. If you had really good eyesight like Superman, you could see the Palace Theatre from Watford Junction station. Watford is also on the Met line, but you've got a 25-minute walk to get into the centre of town. On Sunday, the 17th of October, we have Andropause, which is the male menopause and midlife crisis. That is being hosted by Zora. On Thursday, the 21st of October, we have sports and motor racing. So looking forward to this one. First, Black Marshall is going to be talking to us about that. And she promises, if it's all going to plan, which I'm sure it is, she's got 3 Black sporting heroes that she's going to be bringing, and she's hoping to get them all in the same. I think it was Silverstone she wanted to be broadcasting from. On Saturday, the 23rd of October, we've got Soul to Soul Connections. That's hosted by Zora. And when Pamela was talking, it's about relationships as well, and how we interconnect and interrelate. I was really thinking about Zora's event coming up. On Tuesday, the 26th, we have a day in the, a day in the life of the local councillor. So I'm one of the people who are going to be speaking about that, having just been elected as a local councillor for what we call Central Ward here in Watford. And we also have people from a couple of different disciplines coming in to talk about being in public service. So hopefully a school governor, also trying to hunt down a magistrate, just in terms of being more in public office. And I'm sure Clive can say a bit more about that in a few moments. On the Wednesday, the 27th, we've got Make Your Finances Work. That's an event with Amadou at 7 p.m. Really going to be fascinating. Saturday, the 30th of October, we've got Rapper's Delight, the hip hop cookbook with Joe Innes. Many of you who are regulars, you will know Joe. He's written a cookbook. So he's got a DJ, and he's going to be sharing a recipe from the book, all set to music. That's going to be amazing. Now that's from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. So it's an afternoon thing. And then we close on Sunday, the 31st of August, with the infamous now Black History Month quiz at 7 p.m. It was fantastic last time. We all got dressed up and did it over dinner. So we were all eating dinner, first, second, third course, and then we did the quiz. So that's a summary of what we've got coming up. There is a website. I will drop the website into the chat. And once this goes up on YouTube, I'll also put someone will put the link in the description of the video as well. So that's a potted summary. Clive, back to you.
Thank you very much, Marilyn. I think the website is actually in the chat already. I think Marcia put it in there. Look, I think we've gone a little over, but I'm sure you will forgive us for that. So any final observation from anyone? Because otherwise we are going to close. And I said a message, somebody left here. Okay, no, I think Marcia just put the website address in there again. I'd just like to say again, thank you to Pamela for sharing details of her book and of course her period of service in the criminal justice system and on the right side of the law, as it were. Marilyn, as usual, thank you. And thank you for those of us who've been able to join us live, even those who have arrived late, like my daughter. And thank you for those who will be viewing this online later on. Let us have any observations that you have as to how we might improve in the future. And do come and join us on Thursday, and then for those other events that we're having. They're all free with exception of the event on Saturday, and that is not very expensive either. So thank you very much and have a good evening.
Thank you. Remember to stop the recording just to make sure it renders itself in a good